I just experimented with Google's Notebook, and it is amazing. I uploaded PeopleStuff, my multiple award winning book, and asked it to generate FAQs, a study guide, and an interesting conversation between two AI voices. And this is the result. I think it's pretty amazing, and it's a really great way to digest the nuggets of the book. So here you go. Enjoy.
Hey everyone, ready to level up those leadership skills? We are diving into People Stuff by Zoe Routh today.
Oh, good pick.
It's been getting some great reviews, and for good reason. It's all about how, understanding people, their motivations, their triggers, can make you a more effective leader.
Yeah, what I really like about Ruth's approach is that she starts this really simple but profound idea, and that's shifting your perspective.
Okay.
It's not even about like getting new information.
Yeah.
It's about looking at what you already know, but with fresh eyes.
It's like that saying, you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that created it.
Exactly.
But how do we actually change our thinking?
Right.
Especially when it comes to like those frustrating people problems
Yeah.
we all face, right?
And she uses this great example. Imagine like a dog owner leaving a mess on your lawn, right? Your first reaction might be frustration, anger even.
Right.
You label them as like irresponsible, inconsiderate.
For sure.
But what if, instead of that immediate judgment, you paused and asked yourself,
Okay.
what if they're just having a really bad day?
We've all been there.
Exactly.
Maybe they're dealing with a sick family member or just a crisis at work.
Yeah.
We're so quick to judge, but everyone's got their own stuff going on.
Exactly. And that simple shift in perspective, that moment of empathy, it can totally change how you approach a situation.
That's true.
And it's really the foundation, I think, of better leadership, especially in today's world.
Yeah, because let's face it, trust in leaders is at an all-time low. Politics, business, even the media, like everywhere you look, it seems like there's a leadership crisis.
Totally. And Ruth, she argues that these traditional leadership models, the ones that are all about authority and control, they just don't work in our world today. It's too complex. It's too interconnected. We need new approaches. And it all starts with how we see.
And she says to see clearly, we have to zoom out in terms of time and complexity.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, to feel like our problems are huge.
Oh, yeah.
But then, Ruth reminds us that Aboriginal culture in Australia has thrived for 65,000 years.
65,000.
65,000. Suddenly, that frustrating meeting, that challenging colleague doesn't seem so bad.
It puts things in perspective.
It really does.
It's like those astronauts who talk about the overview effect.
Yes.
Seeing Earth from space, they realize how fragile, how interconnected everything is.
Totally.
And they come back with this completely different perspective.
It's about expanding that circle of concern, right? Recognizing that we're part of something so much bigger than ourselves.
And this applies not just to global issues, but to the people stuff we experience every single day, at work, at home.
Totally.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
So how do we bring this overview effect back down to earth? Into our workplaces, our personal lives.
Well, that's where systems thinking comes in.
Okay.
We often oversimplify problems, especially when it comes to people.
Right.
But it's rarely just a personality clash.
Oh, I've been in those.
Oh, tell me about it.
Workplace conflicts that just seem to drag on forever.
Forever.
And you just,
Ruth uses this example of Karen and Frank at Happy Pants Company.
Oh, no.
I know, right? But they're constantly butting heads.
Oh, I've worked with a Karen and a Frank.
On the surface, total personality conflict.
Yeah.
But when you apply systems thinking, you might uncover like a flawed incentive structure that's actually pitting them against each other. Or maybe there's just a lack of communication, unclear roles.
So instead of just slapping a label on someone, Karen's difficult, Frank's incompetent.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to zoom out.
Yes.
Look for the root causes, the systemic issues that might be driving their behavior.
Precisely. And that's where real change, real leadership begins. Now, to help us understand these different leadership styles and our potential strengths and pitfalls, Ruth introduces this concept of 5 leadership archetypes.
Okay, so she's not talking about putting people in boxes.
No, no.
These are more like frameworks for understanding ourselves and others better.
Exactly. And she emphasizes that these archetypes aren't mutually exclusive, right? We can embody aspects of several. And our dominant archetype, it might even shift depending on the situation.
I like that. So it's not like you're stuck in one archetype forever.
Exactly. So let's start with the elder.
Okay.
Think wise, compassionate, always focused on the greater good.
Someone like Nelson Mandela comes to mind.
Perfect example. A true visionary leader, right?
Absolutely.
Or think about the Iroquois 7 generations principle. It's a philosophy of making decisions based on how they impact 7 generations into the future.
Wow. Talk about long-term thinking.
Right.
It makes you wonder, what will my great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren think of the decisions I'm making today?
It's a powerful concept.
It is.
But here's where it gets interesting. Every archetype has a shadow side.
Oh, okay. So even the wise and compassionate elder has a dark side.
Every rose has its thorn, right? For the elder, the shadow is the tyrant.
Okay.
Someone so convinced of their own rightness, their wisdom, that they become blind to other perspectives, and that often has disastrous consequences.
It's a cautionary tale for even the most well-intentioned leaders.
Absolutely. Humility and that willingness to really consider other viewpoints, it's crucial, especially for those elder types. Okay, let's move on to the warrior.
Ooh, this one sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
What defines a warrior leader?
So the warrior, it's all about courage.
Okay.
Fighting for a cause, really driven to win. Think of someone like,
Okay.
activist Minh Thien, fighting for democracy in Myanmar. Really passionate, driven.
Right. They're the ones on the front lines fighting for what they believe in.
Yes.
Even in the face of danger.
For sure.
But what happens when that fighting spirit, goes too far? What's their shadow side?
Well, the shadow warrior becomes the bully.
Okay.
Right. So while the warrior fights for, the greater good, the bully uses that force and aggression for personal gain. Their courage can turn into ruthlessness. Their drive into a need for domination.
It's a fine line, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it highlights how important it is to understand, the motivation behind the action.
Oh, totally.
So we've talked about wisdom with the elder, courage with the warrior. What about the diplomat?
The diplomat.
Yeah.
The master negotiator, always looking for those win-win solutions.
Right.
They're skilled at using soft power. Yeah. Think Angela Merkel, her really calm, steady leadership when she was Chancellor of Germany.
They're the ones who can bring people together, right?
Yeah.
Find common ground, build consensus.
Absolutely.
But even diplomacy has its downsides.
Of course. Yeah, there's always that shadow.
Right.
The diplomat's shadow is the trickster.
Oh.
So this is where those negotiation skills, they can become,
manipulative.
Manipulative, yeah. Using their understanding of people to advance their own agenda, often at the expense of others.
It's a reminder that even the most positive qualities, when taken to an extreme, can have negative consequences.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got the elder, the warrior, and the diplomat. What are the final 2 archetypes in Ruth's framework?
Right. So we've got the guardian and the pioneer.
Okay.
The guardian, it's all about preserving what works.
Okay.
Protecting traditions, and really championing change that honors the past. Ruth uses a good example here. Peter Fitzsimons.
I know him.
Right. An Australian author, advocate for an Australian republic.
He's pushing for progress, but he still respects, the country's history and heritage.
Exactly. Guardians are the stabilizers.
Okay.
The ones who bring a sense of continuity and order.
I like it.
But then their shadow side.
There's always a shadow.
Always a shadow. It's the fanatic.
Okay.
And this is where that respect for tradition, it just turns into this rigid adherence to the past, right? Resisting any change, even if it's for the better.
It's about clinging to tradition for tradition's sake, even when it's not helpful anymore, really.
Exactly, yeah. It's not serving the greater good anymore.
Right, okay. And that leaves us with the pioneer.
The pioneer, the ultimate trailblazer.
Yes.
Always looking for those new paths. Thrives on adventure, experimentation. Think Elon Musk, all his different ventures.
He's definitely a pioneer, pushing the boundaries of technology and innovation.
Definitely a pioneer. But even pioneers, they can stumble, right?
Of course, yeah.
For the pioneer, the shadow is the gambler. So while the pioneer takes these calculated risks, the gambler, it's like they get addicted to the thrill of the unknown, and it leads to reckless decisions.
Right. They might go too far.
Exactly. And it can have disastrous consequences.
There's a delicate balance, right, between pushing the boundaries and knowing when to, Rein it in.
Finding that sweet spot.
Yes.
It's a dance.
This is fascinating stuff. I can already see how understanding these archetypes can help me, be a better leader.
That's the beauty of Ruth's work.
Yeah.
It's not just theory. She gives you these really practical tools you can use in your own life. And speaking of practical tools, she also goes into what she calls the 4 devils of PeopleStuff.
Okay.
These are 4 distinct patterns of behavior that can really derail teams, create conflict. And understanding them, it can be a game changer in those tricky workplace situations for sure.
Okay, the 4 devils definitely sounds intriguing.
Right.
So who is the first one we need to, watch out for?
Okay, so the first one is the Firebug.
The Firebug.
This is the person who, they're fueled by this perceived loss of power or control.
Okay.
They lash out, they create conflict, they spread negativity like wildfire.
Oh, I know a Firebug.
Right. Imagine you're leading a project and a team member is constantly challenging your decisions, disrupting meetings.
Been there.
Undermining your authority, right? That's your Firebug.
Ouch. Yeah, I've definitely worked with a Firebug or two in my career. Mm-hmm. Their energy, it can be contagious.
No, tell me about it.
It's easy to get, sucked into their drama.
Yeah.
So how do you handle them?
Well, first, it's about understanding their behavior. It often comes from that primal fear of loss that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
They might feel like their ideas aren't being heard, that their contributions aren't valued, their position is threatened.
So it's not about them, being a bad person. They're just reacting to this perceived threat.
Exactly. And as leaders, our job isn't to punish them or silence them.
Right.
It's to address that underlying fear.
Okay. So how do we do that?
Well, we can create an environment where people feel empowered,
right,
where they have a voice, and where their contributions are actually recognized and valued.
So clear communication is key, making sure everyone understands their roles, their responsibilities,
yes,
how their work contributes to the bigger picture.
Precisely. And it's also about, providing those opportunities for collaboration, where people feel like they're actually part of the decision-making.
Right. They have some agency.
Yeah, exactly. When people feel heard and respected, they're less likely to resort to that fire-starting behavior.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, Firebug down.
1 down.
What about the next devil on our list?
Okay, so we have the storm driver.
The storm driver.
So this is the person who is driven by this perceived loss of status or fairness.
Right.
They might feel slighted, overlooked, maybe treated unfairly.
Yeah.
And their emotions, like a storm, intense and unpredictable.
So maybe someone gets passed over for a promotion, or they feel like their contributions aren't being acknowledged.
Yeah, that sting of injustice.
Right.
That's powerful.
It can really trigger some, strong emotions.
For sure. And just like with the Firebug, we have to remember that their behavior, while it's disruptive, it often comes from a deeper place.
Okay.
They might be feeling undervalued, unappreciated, or even, invisible.
Invisible, yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we calm the storm? How do we approach a storm driver?
Again, it starts with understanding
Okay.
and addressing those underlying triggers.
So really listening to them, understanding where they're coming from.
Yes. And as leaders, we can foster a culture of fairness and recognition.
Okay.
Where everyone feels valued, their contributions are acknowledged, and there are clear paths for advancement.
So it's about creating a work environment where people feel like they're on a level playing field.
Yes.
Where hard work is rewarded.
Yes.
Where everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed.
Exactly. And it's also about, providing opportunities for growth and development.
Okay.
So people feel challenged and fulfilled in what they're doing. When people feel like they're learning, they're growing, they're moving forward in their careers, they're less likely to get stuck in those negative thought patterns that fuel that storm driver.
It's giving them an outlet, right? Giving them something positive to focus on.
Exactly.
Okay. 2 devils down, 2 to go.
2 to go.
Who's next on our list of workplace demons?
All right, so next we have the ground splitter.
The ground splitter.
This one's a little trickier.
Okay.
Because they're driven by this fear of speaking up directly.
Right.
So they undermine, they sabotage, they create this division and distrust within the team.
The classic, passive-aggressive type. Right. They might spread gossip, withhold information, or even, form alliances to gain power or influence.
Oh, yeah, they're playing the game.
Right. It's they'd rather operate in the shadows than just address issues head on.
Totally. And their behavior, while it can be subtle, it is so damaging to team morale and productivity.
Yeah, because you never know where you stand with them.
Right.
It creates that that sense of unease.
That tension, yeah.
Right.
So how do you deal with that?
It seems like creating a culture of transparency and open communication would be a good starting point, right?
Absolutely. Encourage people to speak up, share their concerns, and to not be afraid of any kind of retribution.
Right, because if they're afraid to speak up, then they're more likely to go underground, right?
Exactly. It's about creating that safe space where people feel comfortable expressing themselves honestly and respectfully.
So no more whispering in the hallways or sending cryptic emails.
Exactly.
Just put it all out there.
Be upfront.
Yeah.
And it's also about addressing those underlying issues that might be contributing to that behavior, right? Like unclear roles, maybe there's a lack of trust, or even just a history of unresolved conflicts.
So it's like creating this workplace culture where people feel safe to speak their truth.
Yes.
Even if it's uncomfortable.
Yes, exactly.
Because that's how you build that trust and that rapport.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Okay, that's the ground splitter. We've got one more devil to tackle, right?
Yes, one more. And this one could be a tough one. The water bomber.
The water bomber.
So this is the person who's drowning in their own emotions. So maybe someone's dealing with a personal crisis, or they're just feeling overwhelmed by stress and anxiety.
Totally. And they lash out unpredictably, or they withdraw completely, they shut down, they isolate themselves.
Oh, I see. So it's like two extremes.
Two extremes.
They're either flooding everyone with their emotions, or they're creating this drought of communication.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And as leaders, our first instinct might be to avoid.
Right, because their emotions can be, contagious.
Totally.
Right.
But what they really need is our support and understanding.
So how do we offer support without getting, pulled under by their emotional waves?
That's the question, right? I think it starts with creating that safe space again, for them to share what's going on and to really just listen without judgment.
So active listening is key here.
Active listening, validation, let them know that you're there for them. Sometimes just having someone to listen can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. But what if their emotional outbursts are becoming disruptive to the team? How do you balance that?
Yeah, it's tough.
Right.
In those cases, it's about setting boundaries.
Okay.
You gently but firmly let them know that you care about them.
Yeah.
But their behavior is impacting others. And you can even offer support in seeking professional help, therapy, counseling, things like that.
That's a great point. Sometimes people just need that permission to take care of themselves.
Right.
So address those underlying issues that are driving their behavior.
Exactly. And remember, these four devils, they're not permanent labels.
Right.
It's not like you're stuck as a firebug.
Right, yeah.
They're patterns of behavior that, honestly, we're all capable of.
Yeah, depending on the situation, depending on our own emotional triggers, we might embody any one of these.
Exactly. And the more we understand these patterns, the more compassionate and effective we can be, I think, as leaders.
Yeah, it's amazing how much these four devils resonate, with everyday experiences,
Right. You read that and you're like, oh, I know that person.
Literally.
But the good news is she doesn't just leave us with these labels.
Right.
She gives us really practical advice on how to cultivate the positives of each archetype and how to deal with those tricky situations.
So how do we actually become better at dealing with all this people stuff?
Well, she talks a lot about developing emotional agility.
Okay, what does that even mean?
So emotional agility, it's basically being more aware of your emotions.
Okay.
Understanding why you're feeling them, how they impact you.
Right.
And then choosing how you respond.
So it's like hitting the pause button.
Yes.
On those knee-jerk reactions.
Exactly.
And actually choosing a more thoughtful response.
It's not easy.
No, it's not easy. So how do we get better at that?
Well, she suggests things like practicing mindfulness.
Okay.
Reframing those negative thoughts.
So instead of spiraling into that negativity.
Yeah, exactly.
You kind of catch yourself. And reframe it.
Yes. And even just regulating your physical response to stress,
Oh, so taking a deep breath.
Exactly.
Going for a walk, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Or a quick mindfulness exercise.
Right. Just to kind of calm your mind and body.
Exactly. And, she also talks about building resilience.
So bouncing back from setbacks and challenges.
Yeah. Without letting them completely derail you.
Right. Because that's going to happen.
Oh, it happens to all of us.
Right.
Resilience is what allows us to, make those mistakes, but learn from them.
Learn and grow.
Adapt, come back stronger. Yeah.
So how do we build that resilience?
Well, part of it is that growth mindset, right?
Okay.
Seeing challenges as opportunities to learn.
So instead of saying, I can't do this, it's, I haven't learned how to do this yet.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Shifting from that, like limitation to possibility.
Right, because you can always learn.
Exactly. And it's also about, having that support system.
Oh, for sure.
Those people who believe in you, who can offer encouragement when you need it, because
you can't do it alone.
You can't do it alone.
It takes a village.
It really does.
And Ruth, she also talks about, expanding our circle of concern.
Yes.
Like not just focusing on ourselves or our immediate team.
Right.
But thinking about the bigger picture.
It's like that overview effect, right?
Exactly.
Our actions, even the small ones, they have these ripple effects.
They really do.
Way beyond just us.
So every interaction, every decision, every act of leadership.
It all matters.
It has the potential to, create positive change.
Totally.
Not just in our own little bubble, but,
in the world.
In the world.
It's about understanding that we're all connected.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what really resonated with you from the book?
One thing that really stuck with me was this idea of creating a personal declaration.
Oh, yeah, like a personal mission statement, right?
Exactly. Like, what are the values you want to embody as a leader? What's that legacy you want to leave behind?
It's a powerful question to ask yourself.
It is. And you know what I really liked? She includes all these real questions from her readers.
Yeah, it makes it feel very, applicable.
Totally. Yeah. Like one reader asked, how do you manage up politically, sensitively?
Oh, that is such a good question.
Right.
We talk a lot about managing down, leading teams.
Yeah.
But what about those, trickier relationships with the higher-ups?
And her advice, spot on. She basically says, you frame your suggestions as opportunities to collaborate.
Okay.
To learn, appeal to their expertise.
So instead of being like, you need to do this, it's more like, hey, I had this idea. I'd love to get your input.
Exactly.
What do you think?
Right. It's creating that win-win.
Right. Everyone feels respected.
Everyone feels heard. Yeah.
Were there any other questions that kind of came up?
Oh, there were so many good ones. But one that really stood out was about motivation.
Ooh, big one.
I know, right? How do you motivate the unmotivated?
Right, because everyone's got different things that motivate them.
Exactly. And Ruth, she makes this really interesting point. Exactly. So, she talks about designing tasks that are more defined and achievable.
Okay, so breaking things down.
Yes. And then creating rewards that are actually meaningful to each person.
Right. Because what motivates me might not motivate you.
Exactly.
Right.
And most importantly, I think giving people ownership over their work.
Oh, that autonomy piece is huge.
It's huge. People want to feel like they're making a difference.
Right. They're not just a cog in the machine.
Exactly. And finally, she talks about the importance of reframing self-perception.
So helping people to see their own strengths.
Yes. Because if you don't believe in yourself, it's going to be hard for anyone to motivate you.
It's about helping people to see their own potential.
Yes, exactly.
This has been such a rich and insightful conversation.
It really has.
I always learned so much from you.
Likewise.
As we wrap up here, is there one key takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with today?
For me, it's that leadership isn't about the title.
Right.
It's not about the position or even the strategies you use.
Right.
It's about understanding yourself. It's about connecting with others.
It's the people stuff.
It's the people stuff and remembering that we're all in this together.
I love that. And that even in those challenging moments, those people stuff moments.
Which, let's be honest, we all have them.
We all have them. There's always an opportunity for growth.
Always.
For connection.
Yeah.
For making a positive impact.
I love that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into people stuff.
Thank you for having me.
And for sharing all these incredible insights. Until next time, everyone, keep those perspectives shifting and keep leading with heart.